I just wanted to ask you a few questions, a lot of questions that we're getting when people are asking about the 0 to 3 diploma course with
Okay.
MCM. And so I'm hoping you can answer those for some people who are interested.
Sure.
So could you first start by telling me your background and your journey into Montessori?
My Montessori, yeah. Yeah, I moved to Alaska, of all things, in 1990, and I was staying at the youth hostel, and I was looking for a job for the summer, and they said, "Have you thought about working at the Montessori school?" And I said, "The what?" I had never heard of it, didn't know anything about it, got hired as an assistant and fell in love with it. So I got my 3 to 6 training in Portland and came back and worked at the Juneau Montessori School for like mm, 12 years as a guide at 3 to 6. And then I went and got my, well, I worked for a year at the elementary. They expanded to the elementary. So I worked in a 6 to 12 classroom for a year and realized that that plane of education was not my thing. So then I was like, what do I do? And I went and took the 0 to 3 training. I worked in an infant community in Alaska for 13 years, and then I was head of school for 2 years, and then took the training of trainers at 0 to 3. So I was in the classroom a lot of my career, which I find helps a lot in being a trainer. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And at the various age levels too. I think
Mm, mm,
that's great. Um,
yeah.
Wonderful. Um, could you tell us a little bit about what the blended AMI 0 to 3 diploma course will entail?
Yeah, yeah. Um, this course we're doing in 3 blocks. So we'll have 2 in-person blocks, and then the second block is online, and it's a virtual block, and it's in the evenings. And what we're really trying to do with this is to shorten up the in-person time a little bit, make it a little more convenient for people who can't take as much time off to do an in-person diploma course, but still offer the, depth of quality that people are looking for in an AMI course. So that's really the thinking about offering a blended course in terms of making it more accessible while maintaining that quality that people are looking for, right?
Hmm.
Mm.
And what for a 0 to 3 course, even though it's blended, are there other requirements as far as, practice teaching and
Yeah, there are a number of requirements. As with all AMI courses, you're required to have 90% attendance, so whatever the format is, 90% attendance is the minimum for certification. But at the birth to 3 level, one of the most important aspects is really because you're looking at the development of the child of a child who can't really communicate with you through words. So a lot of our work is based on our direct observation of child development. So that entails a 250-hour requirement of observation. Now, it's direct observation of children, it's babies. Um, if you're able to attend a birth, that can count towards some of your hours as part of my requirement. But I attended the birth of one of my assistants, her daughter. We had been working closely together for 5 years, and she was like, "Oh yeah, I'm perfectly comfortable having you come and just observe." And then, you know, so you're really looking at child development. Another aspect of that requirement of observation is an aspect of self-observation, journaling, self-reflection, introspection, those kinds of things. We do a lot of techniques for that too. So it's really a combination of self-reflection and direct observation of children so that you can start to identify you know, where they are in terms of their development of movement, where they are in terms of their development of language, right? Because if we don't know that, we can't prepare the right environment to support them.
Mhm.
So that's a big part of the requirement. Um, Writing albums, we write all of our own albums. Um, and we have students do that because your albums need to be in your own voice, right? They need to make sense to you. So that's why everybody's, you know, this is really, Montessori is really an oral tradition. So we have a lot of discussion about what Montessori meant by certain ideas. And then you create your own manuals for how do I implement this, you know, into practice with children.
And then there's practice teaching and what's supervised practice exactly?
Yeah, supervised practice is basically just when you practice in the environment under the direct supervision, my supervision, or another trained person, so that you um, are practicing in the way that we want you to practice with children. Basically, it's your practice, and we give you feedback about how you're doing, um, what it's like really working with children, you know, those kinds of things in that supervised practice. And then practice teaching, there's a 50-hour requirement for that. That's part of your observation as well. And you go into an AMI environment under the direction of an AMI trained 0 to 3 practitioner. And then you get to work with children. And then you are evaluated on certain things, right? Do you do you engage well with the children, right? Things like that. So that, and then once all of those pieces are in, right, and you've made these manuals and you've done all this work, we end with both written and oral exams at the conclusion, right? So,
Will I be prepared for those?
oh my goodness, will you ever?
Yes.
Yes, yes. The thing about Montessori exams, I have to say, is we're really looking for, do you know enough to begin? Because your training is always just the beginning of the real work with children, right? So do you know enough to go out and represent AMI in working with young children? Yeah.
Wonderful. What kind of qualifications does somebody need or to join this course, or who is it designed for?
Hmm.
What type of
That-
person?
yeah, that's a really good question. What's interesting about this course is it really prepares a wide variety of people. I mean, you can do a lot with this course, frankly. Um, you can work in a classroom with children under the age of 3. We call them communities. They're not really classrooms. You're not teaching. We get into that later on, but you know, either with babies or young children, how to prepare those environments and work with those young children, how to work with parents, how to do parent-baby classes, how to work with parents in the home, about we've had a lot of people who have been doulas who take this training, or midwives who have taken this training, just to sort of expand their understanding of that. There's a prenatal component to this because development doesn't just start once the baby's born, right?
Mhm.
So there are actually a number of things you can use this kind of training for, right? The other thing is, with this kind of a diploma, it's recognized globally. So, you know, you can work anywhere in the United States, you can work in anywhere globally, right? With this diploma. Yeah.
Well, that leads me to my next question. How is the blended AMI different than other training?
Really good question. What's interesting about this course is It really prepares a wide variety of people. I mean, you can do a lot with this course.
Things that I've seen out there for infants and toddlers.
Yeah. Um, it's a hard question for me to answer only because I'm biased.
Hmm.
Um, AMI training has a reputation for being of the highest quality. There's a real depth of theory behind what we do in practice because the more we understand about what we're doing and why we're doing it, the better job we do as adults. So, I mean, it's really the best quality training. It takes a little bit longer, typically costs a little bit more, but you're really investing in truly understanding child development and how to support that development. And, that's certainly something we all need in the world today. And yeah, it just gives you a breadth and depth of understanding of who this child is that you just don't get in other trainings, right?
Hmm. Hmm. You had talked a little bit about the format for the blended course,
Mhm.
and I am wondering if you could talk a little bit about the in-person sessions and the online sessions. Are they always live? Are there things, can I do it
Mm.
at my own pace or not? Because a lot of times with blended courses, people think that, and I want to make sure that people
Uh,
know that that's
There's
not
an
a,
under, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that's not the case for this. Yeah. Um, well, the in-person is basically 8 hours a day. I mean, there's 8 hours a day, but an hour for lunch, right? And it is a full-on participatory training, right? The in-person time is when we're going to be really working with all the materials, getting hands-on with that. We're going to be making materials. So it's a material making requirement at the 0 to 3 level because you can't really find some of these materials to purchase. So we hand make them, right? Some of the mobiles, the topponcinos, some of the other things. So that's a component of that. Um, let's see. So in person, we're doing all the hands-on kinds of things. During the online part, it is 3 hours a night. It is live, and we do it so that people are still able to work, but I will say it's still a time commitment because you're having lectures that you're going to have to write up, just like you did in person, right? We have submissions. You have a week. I give lectures. We do hands-on work. You have some time to complete those, and then you turn them in, and then you're turning work in and receiving work back to correct every week. That doesn't stop even when we're online, right? There are still requirements for writing and doing those submissions. We just don't do any of the hands-on work. It's more the theoretical aspects and some of the personality development aspects that we do in person, but there's continuous work involved in that online component.
So what resources will be available as far as
Mhm.
materials go? And
Mhm.
you mentioned making materials.
Mhm.
What if I come to training and I have no ability to sew? How do I make
Oh
these materials?
boy, you get to learn. Yeah, it's a really interesting thing because uh, so many people come to the training. I don't know how to sew. I've never made a mobile before. I've never thought about how to. Great. Then you don't have any preconceived ideas about how to do it or how not to do it, right?
Mhm.
The thing is, what I've discovered, because I went into my training and I didn't know how to sew, right? What you do is there are going to be people around you that do. And we are also going to have some support with material making because I will admit I'm not the best seamstress myself. I can manage these things. Mobile making is right up my alley. But it's that's part of the community that we build is it's like the sewing circles, from past days. And you find out that, oh yeah, there are times when we're just sitting around, but you're making things with your hands, having conversations with your colleagues and friends. And pretty soon it's like, oh, look at this beautiful thing that I've just created. It's
Mhm.
really turns out to be a really lovely experience for people.
How can this particular course help me advance my career?
Mm, Good question. Um, the thing is, this particular course lays the foundation for anything else that you might want to do in Montessori. I mean, the birth to three level is really foundational. Um, Dr. Montessori herself worked at the 3 to 6 level. But if you look at cutting edge neuroscience, brain development, all of that work is 3 and under, you know, because that is when all of your neurological construction happens, right? So there's a foundation in this understanding for a lot of different kinds of venues, not just in Montessori, but it becomes a foundation in any other working with parents or child centered anything, frankly, because this course doesn't just give you Montessori theory. We have a whole component about brain development, current neuroscientific research, social emotional development, cognitive development. So, I mean, you're really getting a vast understanding of who this young child is. And you can take that a lot of places, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Um, I think you mentioned this before, but will the certification allow me to work internationally?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. An AMI diploma allows you to go anywhere in the world. And I mean it is the gold standard. I mean when you get out into the world, and this is not just me being biased here now, but it is the most respected diploma that you can get in terms of Montessori education. So, yeah.
Great. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the financial
Mhm.
aspects. So obviously people want to know how much is it going to cost me? And so the
Yeah.
base tuition is $12,000. $500 of that is a course deposit, and then half will be due in June and half in January. But we understand sometimes you run into things, and so we can work on payment plans as well. Um, are there additional costs that somebody should consider on top of tuition?
Mm. Well, if you're traveling to
Mhm.
train, you know, um, accommodation, how you might get around, those kinds of things. I mean, you have to invest in some of those materials for your material making. One of the things we try to do is facilitate people shopping together so you can buy things in bulk so it doesn't cost as much, right? Those kinds of things. Um, let's see, any other, hopefully no other real big surprises that I can think of. Yeah.
Um, People ask about financial aid and scholarships, and unfortunately, at this time, we don't have any financial aid or scholarships available for our Chicago courses. There are so many different programs out there that are looking to sponsor people, though. They come to us all the time at MCM to tell us they're looking for a trained individual or somebody who's in training or curious about training. So, what I would say is definitely reach out to me. to get more information on that. There are also scholarships through the MES Fund, which is the Margaret Elizabeth Stevenson Fund. Once you're accepted to a course, you can apply for that, and the deadline for that is May 1st, and it is open now for applications. So, but you do the qualification is you do need to be accepted to an AMI program. So. Let's see here. As far as the schedule goes, you had talked about the different blocks. Will I ever have to come to class on a weekend?
No.
No. Okay.
Because just like everyone else, I like a weekend, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of community can I expect to build through this? I'm not coming to training with anybody else. So what can you talk about
Yeah.
the community through training?
Yeah. Typically what ends up happening is the group of people who are in a training there themselves form a pretty tight community because you're going through an intense training, looking at the development of really young children, right?
Mhm.
And so that tends to, I don't know, soften our edges a bit, you know? And and then there's always the wider AMI Montessori community. I mean, it's a really strong, vibrant community, international community that you become a part of, right? You get international bulletins, you keep in touch with not just your own cohort, but this opens up going to the Montessori experience, refresher courses, wider, involvement with those like concentric circles of other Montessori educators. I mean, I can tell you, when I was working in Juneau, Alaska, and I was head of school, it was really important to me to bring my assistants to some of these training courses because you start to feel how much bigger than just your one little classroom or one school really is. I mean, it's connected to this wider community of people who have this vision for how childhood could be, right?
Mhm. Hmm. I know that through my own training, which is 6 to 12, that community that we built was wonderful. And there's a certain vulnerability that you share with those individuals because it is such a transformative
Yeah,
process, the training.
yeah,
And so it's really neat to be a part of that, and continue to be a part of it, even though I'm not particularly teaching in schools anymore.
right.
You can do a lot of things with your AMI diploma.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And you
that's
probably still keep in touch with those people.
yes. Yes.
Like I'm in touch with the people that I went through, some of my people that I went through 3 to 6 training with, 0 to 3 training with. I mean, that
Mhm.
was 40 years ago, something crazy.
What kind of support are you able to, or are students able to get when they're with you during training? What kind of support can you offer?
Yeah. Well, I don't know how to answer that one quite. I mean, I'm there with you. So if you need help, all you have to do is let me know that you need help and what you're struggling with. And we try to work out ways to support one another. I mean, that's part of becoming a member of that wider community of colleagues because, everybody's going to have different strengths and weaknesses. We don't all come into this with the same level of experience. And, everyone is going to have something to contribute and something that maybe I'm not quite as good at. And so one of the things I try to facilitate in my groups is this inter reliability, right? This interdependence between people. And then if you're having issues with something, then we can talk about it, right?
Mhm.
I mean, that's basically it, is I try to keep really open lines of communication so people feel like, I you can ask me questions if you have questions, right? Maybe not in the middle of a lecture, but right?
Well, I think the one thing that I always go back to is that we're all human, and we
Yeah,
realize that we are working with humans on a daily basis. And
yeah,
you know, the wonderful thing when you're with somebody is you can see if they're not having a great day, or you can see that kind of stuff. But if you don't communicate, sometimes it's very hard to help you through the process of being
yes,
human. So
yeah,
communication is always key, and it's the great thing about the community is that you start to feel that you can have open communication. So,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
huh. Is there anything else that people should know about training at the 0 to 3
Yeah,
level and with
yeah.
with Sharlyn Smith?
With me. Um, in general, I think people come into this training and they think, oh, I'm working with babies, I'm working with toddlers, you know. The thing is, this is a really rigorous academic course, and it's not it's not easy, right? It's not easy. People come into it and they think, oh, this is gonna be It's not an easy course. It is, however, extremely rewarding course getting through it because the information is so interesting. It's really mind-blowing, actually, when you start to realize everything that babies and toddlers do and are capable of doing that we just don't think about.
Hmm.
So it's a lot of work. And I think people need to know that straight up.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for answering those questions. I know people
Yeah,
will have more questions after this, and we
sure.
will try and make sure that we get answers to them. But I appreciate your time
Sure.
for 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 the people who are interested. So,
Yeah.